Hello, my name is Elizabeth and I kind of just wanted to rant today because I feel like there's been so many things lately that have just, it's like the Barbie movie monologue where women are just not winning lately, and our culture is just so preoccupied with telling women what to do. And this is not just a conservative thing or a liberal thing. I actually think it's like across the spectrum. I think there is just this overarching cultural narrative need to scold women, and I'm so tired of it that I thought I would script this video. I thought I would like sit down and write a script, because sometimes I do that on the rare occasion, and I feel like this is something you're supposed to do, so scold me in the comments for not doing that as I'm talking about scolding women. But I'm just gonna put my makeup on for the day and chat. And if you've never been here before, hello, my name is Elizabeth and I make lifestyle videos, commentary videos, and whatever else strikes my fancy. And today I'm just like so tired of women being told what to do. And I feel like this is evident like across the sphere. This is not just like conservative men or liberal people telling women what to do. I think there's two things that have just like reminded me of how much our culture is obsessed with scolding women. And that is the Bumble, like the Bumble ads. I'm sure you saw them. They were like all over the internet, where Bumble was like telling people, oh, you know, a vow of celibacy is not the answer. Which, have people joked about that before on the internet? Yes. But basing your entire ad campaign to get people to get back on Bumble and use dating apps and by scolding women for giving up on dating is such a move, like such a weird reflex. And also Harrison Butker, the kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs, he's out here like telling women that our highest calling is to be a wife and mother. And when you have nuns coming out and being like, hey bro, you took this too far, you should know you took it too far. Like, those two things just like really reminded me of just like how much anti-feminism is embedded in our culture, and I just wanted to chat about it because I'm really tired of this pervasive feeling as women that we are never doing enough. And I just think it's like so evident like right now in our culture. And last year you had Barbie come out and there was like this whole conversation like, was Barbie feminist enough? Was it intersectional enough? Did it do enough? Did it just scrape the surface of feminism? Was it a disappointment as a movie? And honestly, I think that conversation is a good conversation we have, but if anything has taught us that Barbie was barely intersectional, it barely scraped the surface of feminism, but by and by our culture barely allows feminism. If women dare to live outside the mold that our culture thinks is acceptable, they're in the wrong, and I think that Bumble is a good example of that. And just like the cultural shift in how we treat women, like I actually think we're going kind of backwards when you look at Roe v. Wade. And just like, I live in Florida, they just passed a 6 weeks abortion ban into law, and like we're gonna be voting on abortion in November. Florida I was gonna say Floridians, and then I said Florida, so I kind of messed up. Florida's gonna be voting on whether or not to enshrine abortion as a constitutional right in the state constitution. But the problem is it would require a 60% majority, and abortion is such a hotly debated topic. Like half of people say abortion should be legal and the other half say it shouldn't, and somehow you have to get 60% to make it a constitutional right. And maybe I'm a little bit of a pessimist, but I don't think 60% of Floridians are going to vote to enshrine abortion in the state constitution. And no wonder people aren't on dating apps, because can you trust the men around you to support you if you make a decision like about your body and your choices? I remember I went on a date with a guy last summer, and halfway through the date he was like, yeah, I'm considering myself pretty liberal, there's just some areas where I'm conservative. And I was like, what areas? And he said, well, about being pro-life. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, my ex-wife and I struggle to have a child, so I think anybody who has an abortion is like selfish, and when you struggle so hard to have a child, you shouldn't, like, abortion shouldn't be allowed because of people who struggle to have a baby. And I'm like, okay, I understand you and your ex-wife like struggle to get pregnant, but what does that have to do with me and my body? Like, you shouldn't tell somebody you have to carry a child because I struggle to carry a child. The logic isn't logicking. And I think it was interesting. I do think it's great that so many people came out to Harrison Butker's comments about a woman's highest vocation being a mother and a wife, and we're like, hey bro, this is really terrible. And people were roasting him on the internet, but honestly, the way our culture treats women who aren't married is horrible. If you haven't found a man and you want to find a man, it's somehow you're failing. And our culture just treats single women terribly. I'm just saying. I literally saw a video on Twitter the other day of this girl saying, you know, how hard it is to date in this age, and people were out here making fun of her and saying that it was her failure, like she must be the problem, that she can't find a man. And what's interesting, and I know this video is gonna be all over the place, like I just have a lot of thoughts and I'm just dumping them on the internet. But you know those Facebook pages where people are like, are we dating the same man in Dallas? Are we dating the same man in Chicago? You don't see that with women. You don't see, are we dating the same cheating girl in Illinois? You know, we don't see those kind of Facebook pages where men have to collaborate together to find out if their significant other is actually a liar and cheating on them. But you see that with men, and for some reason we still blame women instead of calling out the cultural pervasiveness of men who absolutely horrible to women. Instead of calling that out and saying, hey, like, women are struggling to find good men because men are trash, instead of saying that, we just blame women. In fact, not only do we blame women, but we men try to stop the community aspect of women protecting each other. For example, those are we dating the same guy pages, there are literally men who are suing women for talking about them on the internet. And it's like, if your behavior is so bad that a woman is desperate to find out if she's in the right, and she goes online to say, hey, is this guy treating other people the same way? Is he lying to me? And other women are like, oh yeah, he's a liar, he's a terrible person. And your response to that is not, oh, maybe I should change my behavior, maybe I should be a better person. But your response is to sue those women for libel and for defamation, and to say they shouldn't have access to a platform where they can try to protect each other. If that's your response, you have no right to blame women for being single in this day and age. It's just crazy to me how much our culture blames women when things go wrong relationship-wise. It feels like it's always a single woman's fault and not the terrible men out there who treat women like a commodity and who pass laws that make it harder for us to exist and be successful and be, if we want to be a wife and mother, to be a wife and mother in the timing and when it is best for us. It's like, yeah, it just makes it so much harder. And then you punish women for just it's what it feels like. You're just punishing us for just existing as women. And yet it's our fault that men are single and isolated and lonely because women aren't available enough to lonely men. And so lonely men become radicalized and become, you know, lone wolf terrorists or whatever. And for some reason, if women just treated men better, then they wouldn't be isolated, lonely, you know, susceptible to far-right terrorism, which is the most BS thing I've ever heard. And yet for some reason it's women's fault that men are facing a loneliness crisis. Women aren't out here facing a loneliness crisis. In fact, I would say women are, I believe it's been statistically proven that women are happier when we're single because we thrive. We don't have to worry about accommodating other people in our lives the way men never worry about accommodating the woman in their life. I was just watching a Curtis Connor video about a British reality TV show, and it was about like giving them like an unlimited budget, this crazy budget, and these women would like let their future husbands plan their weddings. That was like and these guys were like horrible at it. They were just like horrible at it because they do not care about the women of their life. They treat them as though, what's the word I'm looking for? As though they will always be there. So they can plan the shittiest wedding you can imagine, like literally the worst wedding possible. And this woman is still gonna walk down the aisle. She's still gonna do what's expected of her because she loves her man. And yeah, that everybody in her life is gonna be like, bro, this guy is treating you horribly, but she's still gonna marry him. And men know that. Men know that once a woman loves you, she will do everything in her power to make it work. And you can get away with literal murder. Like I will say it, men murder women all the time. They literally, women are more at risk of domestic violence in a relationship than not in a relationship. And like, you're more likely to be harmed by someone you know than anyone else. And yet somehow women somehow still end up in relationships. We still let ourselves fall in love and date men, and men walk all over us and treat us terribly. Anyway, this is such a ranty video. I'm just like literally ranting because I was watching that Curtis Connor video, and it's just so aggravating. It so eats at me how people treat women like they will just exist forever. Like they will allow you to treat them terribly and to make these horrible choices towards them. And women will just take it. We do, let's be honest. And if we don't just take it, if we stand up for ourselves, this culture will be out here creating Bumble ads like, a vow of celibacy is not the answer. No, the answer is be better. Like, men should be better. That's the answer. But instead of saying that's the answer, we scold women and tell them to not be a nun. Don't be a nun. Don't give up on dating. Don't give up on men. Well, men deserve to be given up on. Men truly deserve to be given up on right now. I do think the bare minimum, let's focus on me. That's the bare minimum, focusing on me. I do think the bare minimum of feminism is respecting every woman's choice and respecting every woman's decision whether to be a wife and mother or to pursue a career at the same time as being a wife and mother or to not be a wife and mother. I think that is the bare minimum of feminism. And so many aspects of our culture are walking backwards from the bare minimum that we have a whole Barbie movie telling us, reminding us what the bare minimum is, and less than a year later we have an entire graduation speech going viral of a man scolding women and telling them that their vocation in life is to be a wife and mother, and if they are not a wife and mother, then their unfulfillment of life really hasn't started for them yet. I'm 30, I'm not a wife and mother. I'm very happy right now to not be a wife and mother. Sometimes, last night I was getting ready to go out with my boyfriend and some friends, and I thought, I wouldn't be able to do this if I was a wife and mother right now. Like, I wouldn't just be able to put on some gorgeous makeup, put on my fun party outfit, and go down to the bar and just have a great time at 90s night at the bar without thinking, who's going to watch my children tonight? Will I be exhausted the rest of the weekend so that I can't care for my children? Will I be spending too much money that I can't spend on my own children? I'm happy right now to not have children, to not have to like think of all those things, because that's part of being a wife and mother, is you give up those fun nights of freedom, because even when you can take a night off from your children, it will have consequences for the rest of your week. It will have long-term consequences. You know that by exchanging a fun night, you're going to have grumpy kids the next day who will be hounding you, and you will have to like overcompensate for having a night out. I was just thinking that, and that's part of the reason, like, sometimes I'm like, oh, it would be nice to have kids, like, oh, I want a baby. But then I'm like, actually, Elizabeth, you do not want a baby right now. You are enjoying the freedom to say, oh, I want to go to Europe next weekend, and not have to think, childcare, can my children travel with me? Can I take time off work and also afford it while also having children in the equation? Like, I'm very grateful to not have kids right now because I'm still enjoying these moments, and no one should tell a young woman that she can't enjoy that time, because you wouldn't think to tell a man who is traveling the world, oh, you need to go start your family right now because you're gonna regret it when you're 60. People don't tell that to men. They tell that to women, because for some reason women turn into spinsters and men are just single forever and nobody cares. Like, nobody sees a single man as an unfathered, or a man who's not a father yet, as like a waste of potential. But for some reason, women are seen that way. And I think that graduation speech ate at a lot of us, Because no matter our career wins, no matter how successful we are, no matter how fulfilled we are, and the relationships that we have and the career choices that we make, we will be seen as unfulfilled and unhappy until we produce children and show that we can be a mother. We will be seen as frivolous forever until we have produced something that our culture considers a value, which is to be a wife and mother. A career woman is not seen as valued in our culture. Career men are lauded, but career women are just not lauded in our culture. And I'm not asking to be lauded. I'm just asking to be respected for the choices that I've made. I'm not asking to be put on like billboards and celebrated for being a career woman. I'm just asking to be respected and to not be seen as less than, and not to be seen as biding my time until I'm a wife and mother. I know people on the internet, when they see a woman ranting, they're like, oh, something must be wrong in her personal life. Like, something must be going wrong. She must be, like, losing it. And that's not, I'm gonna cry, because, like, that is such a hurtful way to take a woman's feelings and turn them into something emotional. And that makes me upset. But that is not, that's truly, like, nothing has gone wrong in my personal life. I just have seen all of these stories, and they just, like, eat at me. And then I think back to when I was a kid, and I thought when I grew up, like, I'm going to have a job and people will respect me and I'll have the right to vote. And like all these women who came before me, Sojourner Truth and Eleanor Roosevelt and even Hillary Clinton, they worked so hard for a future where women would be successful and be on an equal playing field. And I know, like, I'm a white woman and maybe my intersectionality has failed many times. Like, I've not advocated for women of color and black women and people in countries that the US has funded wars. I've not done everything I should do to advocate for them. And I know as a white woman I failed in that regard, but that doesn't mean that I didn't see a future where as a little girl I looked at the world and I thought it would be amazing to grow up. Like, I would have an amazing life. Like, I could run for president, I could go to the moon, I could have a job, I could be a wife and mother, and I would be seen the same as any other boy I knew as a little girl. Like, I knew I grew up in a cult. Like, I remember growing up in a culture, in a cult that treated girls' value as nothing more than being a wife and mother. And I would look outside of that and I would think, when I leave this, I'm going to be treated fairly. Like, I will be given a fair shake by the world. And of course I didn't know that. I didn't know, because I grew up in a very sheltered place. I didn't think about, like, oh, black women aren't treated fairly and indigenous women are murdered at higher rates. I didn't know any of that. I was just a 10 or 12 or 13 or 14-year-old girl who just wanted to grow up and vote and have the same rights as the men I saw in my life. Have the same opportunities to go to college and to be treated as though their work mattered beyond being a husband and a dad. I wanted the same thing. I wanted to be treated the same way. And I feel like I grew up and I've been so disappointed by the world. And that's what this rant is all about. I'm just disappointed. I'm just disappointed that our culture continues to shame single women, that won't leave women alone. I wish it would leave women alone the way it left men alone. I just want to live my life and to be treated like anybody else. And I think a lot of women want that. I don't want to be lauded for being a single woman or being unmarried and not having kids. I just want it to be fine. Just let it be fine. Yeah, just leave me alone. Thanks. Alright, thanks for watching. I'm gonna stop ranting because I don't know where this went. And will I have the guts to edit and post this? I don't know. Like, this has been a little too honest. But anyway, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.